going on, vinyl community and Kiss Army? Welcome to another video with the Record Spinner. In today's video, I am going to be ranking the shows recorded for Kiss Alive. Now, the release of the Dress to Kill and Alive 50th Anniversary Super Deluxe box sets provided the recordings us fans have been wanting for basically decades, and that is the shows recorded for Kiss Alive. Now, upon listening to all of them, there were some major surprises that almost rewrote the narrative that's been portrayed within history for the last 50 years, but beyond my analytical years, I approached it with the trajectory that we've never heard multi-track live shows from this period apart from audience and soundboard recordings, so to be able to hear Kiss live warts and all in this style was a true treat. Now, within these 5 shows, sure, there were some similarities, but there were also a lot of differences, and it got me thinking how I would go about ranking these shows from worst to best. Let it be known that this ranking is solely my opinion and is neither right or wrong. If you think the show from Wildwood is the best, then I respect your opinion, but who knows, maybe we'll see eye to eye on some things. So enough of the chit chat, let's jump into what this video is all about. Now, the 5 shows I'm going to be focusing on in this video are of course the ones from the Cobo Arena in Detroit, Michigan on May 16th, the Music Hall in Cleveland, Ohio on June 21st, the 2 shows at the RKO Orpheum Theater in Davenport, Iowa on July 20th, and the Convention Center in Wildwood, New Jersey on July 23rd. And coming in at number 5 at the bottom of the barrel is this one. It's the second show from the RKO Orpheum Theater in Davenport, Iowa on July 20th. Now, how this show managed to get the stamp of approval to get released, warts and all, is shocking because Paul Stanley really had an off night at this show. Obviously, the band did 2 shows in one day. They also recorded rehearsals earlier in the day. He was reportedly going through some bouts of illness, and instead of going through the expensive ordeal of rescheduling the recording truck, they decided to roll tape, and hate to say it, they probably would have been better off not doing so because Paul's vocals sound super croaky, and during some moments he resorts to using some type of ill-suited falsetto that almost summons Just a Boy from Music from the Elder, and his stage raps are entirely phoned in. The band sounds generally tired, but they do manage to pick up momentum as the show progresses, and your analytical ears will perk when you hear Gene address the crowd as Quad City during Let Me Go Rock and Roll, which can be heard on Kiss Alive. I hate to sound harsh because these are my boys, and sure, any band can have an off night, and this certainly was one for Kiss, and it unfortunately doesn't really contain any of the bombast and excitement you would expect from them. Coming in at number 4 is this one. It's the first show from the RKO Orpheum Theater in Davenport, Iowa on July 20th. Again, like the second show, Paul's vocals are a little all over the place. They do retain some of his natural power, but it is played down majorly. Same with the stage raps. Now, there were a few anomalies during the group's performance that sort of threw them off, such as Paul's amp blowing out during the end of Hotter Than Hell, and then both he and Ace came in late during the intro to 100,000 Years. Despite the band's overall shortcomings, the audience really is the star of this recording, and they are every bit as responsive to Paul's stage raps and clapping along to the songs. However, I gotta address the elephant in the room. It was advertised in local ads that the show was going to be recorded for what became Kiss Alive, and one spectator thought it was a brilliant idea to bring their bullhorn and blow it all throughout the show, and it plagues the audience ambiance to a high degree. Not sure if maybe they only attended the first show or didn't think to bring it to the second, but it doesn't appear there. But if you can bypass that, then hopefully this show suffices as passable. Also, little fun Easter egg. You guys know that little outro to Destroyer that's often called Rock and Roll Party because that's what you hear Paul Stanley shouting in the distance underlying the choir from Great Expectations? Upon some thorough listening, that rap comes from this show. So the more you know. Coming in at number 3 is this one. It's the show from the Convention Center in Wildwood, New Jersey on July 23rd. Listening to this show from top to bottom was a real revelation because most of Kiss Alive comes from this show. Now, what makes it unique is that roadie J.R. Smalling doesn't do his typical "you wanted the best" introduction. Instead, he says something like, "If you want to party with the hottest rock and roll band in the world, you gotta party with Kiss," which goes to prove that maybe Kiss wasn't fully set on that infamous battle cry that would ultimately kick off most, if not all, of their shows from this period forward. Now, listening to this was kind of peculiar because obviously it's been on record that the one element from the Raw live recordings that wasn't touched up was Peter Criss's drums. So everything else, vocals, guitars, and bass, were more or less redone. Now, you listen to this show, and Paul's vocals sound too close to the final record, and it's not until you get to a track like Hotter Than Hell where you can almost hear the bleed through of his live vocal coming through the ambient mics, and it doesn't exactly line up to the overdub that he laid down later. It almost sounds perfect compared to his not so conveying vocal delivery on 100,000 Years. Now, does that mean that the live vocal was scrubbed over, or Eddie Kramer conspicuously decided to use the overdub? Who knows? But what's even weirder is that there are some flubs that Ace does during his guitar solos, and those are intact in the recording, so it's a weird anomaly, no pun intended. Nonetheless, the band delivers a very tight performance, presumably down to the compact size of the venue, and it's a no-brainer why they relied on this show for most of the album. Coming in at number 2 is this one. It's the show from the Music Hall in Cleveland, Ohio on June 21st. Now, this was kind of divisive to include in this ranking because technically we do not have the full show, despite the fact that Robert V. Conti confirmed the full show existing when he asserted the archives for the You Wanted the Best, You Got the Best album in 1996. All we have is the middle portion, which is one of 3 reels that were recorded, and those tracks were included as part of the bonus live segment of the Alive box set with the Davenport rehearsals. Now, when you listen to that mere teaser, it goes without saying that most of Paul's stage raps on Alive come from this show, because this is peak Starchild at his most frantic and demanding, especially when you get to the Preacher segment during Peter's drum solo in 100,000 Years. He's got the audience at the palm of his hand, and that alone is one of the facets as to why he is one of the greatest 1970s rock frontmen. Another thing to mention, and this lumps into the scrutiny of what wasn't included in the Alive box, was the King Biscuit Flower Hour broadcast, and that included both Let Me Know and Rock and Roll All Night from the Cleveland show. And while it's not in the box set, I do have it as part of the Alive Outtakes bootleg, which I kind of can't get rid of despite the fact that the other songs included are also what was officially released in the box set. Just focus on Let Me Know alone. When you hear it, it sounds like it was mixed for consideration for Alive, and also the rarity value of the song itself boosts the show for me because the set lists from the previous other shows are more or less the same to a degree. One can only hope that the remaining 2 reels are located, or maybe they were purposely left behind for a future release. That would be cheeky if so, but until we hear the full thing, I'm led to believe that the Cleveland show is exceptional. And that leaves one more show to fill at the number 1 spot. It's the show from the Cobo Arena in Detroit, Michigan on May 16th. To me, this is the holy grail of Kiss live recordings, and it's down to the lore and aura that surrounds it. Detroit was a city that embraced Kiss when no one else did. It was their first sold-out arena headline show, and Kisstory over the years stated that most of Alive came from this show, and upon listening to it, I realized that pretty much none of it, apart from the audience probably, was used. One of the reasons why I rank this show at number 1 is because it's one of the most interesting and revealing Kiss shows I've ever listened to. I love the sequencing and flow of Kiss Alive, very much mirrored in the set lists of the previous shows that I've discussed in this video, but any set list facet that's radically different to what we come to expect, I will perk up over. First off, J.R. Smalling doesn't do an introduction. The show starts with Rock Bottom, which is the most oddball way to kick off a Kiss show. You have rarely performed deep cuts like Two Timer and Let Me Know. It's also bizarre to hear Let Me Go Rock and Roll shortened without the live-only vamp, and while Deuce typically kicks off a Kiss show, it doesn't appear until the encore. I would guess that once the band and Eddie Kramer listened back to the tapes, they knew this was going to be challenging, hence why they also recorded Cleveland, Davenport, and Wildwood, so they had a variety of sources to choose from. There are some flubs here and there, but that's the beauty of a live performance, and the band's performance is absolutely ferocious. My favorite Kiss song ever is Parasite, and my go-to version is the one from this show. Peter Criss is the MVP on that track, and I think it's him playing at his absolute peak. Music and performances aside, the audience here really portrays the magic of a Kiss show. Whereas the previous shows were in smaller theaters and the crowd sounds very tamed, for lack of a better term, the arena scale of 18,000 Motor City spectators going nuts and setting off firecrackers throughout the show is what makes this show a joy to listen to. If there were ever a time machine where I can go back and see one show, it would have to be this one. So there you guys go. That is my ranking of the shows recorded for Kiss Alive. Here is my question for you guys. How would you rank these shows? Please drop a comment down below. I'd love to know. And if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead, give it a like, and subscribe to the channel. See you guys in the next video. And most importantly, keep the record spinning.